zombies! This video is the makeup tutorial for the Cinderella look you saw in the trailer. If you don't know what I'm talking about and you want to watch it, click here right meow. If you want to see behind the scenes and bloopers from the making of this Glam&Gore Cinderella, you will be able to click right here once that video is up. But if you came for the makeup, you're in the right place. Let's hop right into the glam. I'm starting out with a Cinderella wig provided by Hair He Goes on Instagram, my costume from CostumeSuperCenter.com, and my foundation base already on so that we can get into the good stuff. Speaking of good stuff, let's talk about brows. The perk of wearing a wig with a really long bangs is that I can keep these babies however I want on my face because you don't really end up seeing them anyway. But if you can see your brows with your Cindy wig, she's about a 3 on the eyebrow scale. Not as stickly as Snow White, but she ain't got much going on. To start with the eyeballs, you might want to make sure you got some sort of eyeshadow primer first because we're going to be working with light colors. Light colors will show up better and last longer with a good primer underneath of them. Quickly, I want to say I'm really sorry some of these shots are way out of focus. I thought I had autofocus on and it turns out I didn't. LOL. It hurts me. But anyway, start by taking a dense packing brush and patting white or any shadow lighter than your skin tone all over the lid. Colors lighter than your skin tone on the lids will really draw attention to the eyes and make them pop. Next, taking a neutral eyeshadow that is a few shades darker than your skin tone on a fluffy blending brush, I'm gently blending that in the outer corner of my lid, and circling it out lightly into the crease. With the same brush and color, I'm doing the same light blending in the inner corner of the lid as well. Adding some depth to this inner corner will give us a slight illusion of rounder eyes, like Miss Cinderella. Then try to find a particularly awesome white or light iridescent shadow or pigment. This one is Lumi from Sugarpill and it is gorgeous because it has this bluish tint to it when it hits the light. And pat that on top of the lightest parts of your lid. The iridescence will bring more light and call more attention to the eyes since you know by now Cindy's glam look is all about those dreamy eyeballs before she fluffs one up. Feel free to go back in with that fluffy brush to soften the edges of the iridescent shadow a bit. Next I am taking a white eyeliner, specifically a NYX Jumbo eye pencil, a staple of all Glam&Gore princesses thus far, which by the way lots of people don't seem to realize you can sharpen these babies, you just need to find a sharpener big enough for the job. But thank goodness this shot was in focus so you could see all of my irritated eyeball veins. Put white liner in the waterline to make yourself look slightly less sleep deprived than you really are. Then I'm taking the same neutral tan shadow from before but on a pencil brush this time to sweep a little bit of color right underneath the outer half of my lower lash line. Onto the eyeliner. The original Cinderella probably didn't wear any eyeliner from what I can see, but I'm doing a tiny little wing just on the outer half of the eyes for a little bit of a pick-me-up, and again to draw attention to lay eyeballs. This is very much a personal preference, but I'm also adding a tiny bit of pointed eyeliner in the inner corners of the eyes to really emphasize that lifted eye shape. Next, be extremely out of focus while applying mascara on the upper and lower lashes. And glue on your most princessy pair of fake eyelashes. That's it for the eyes, while we still have 2 fully connected inside of our heads. For the face, I did a tiny bit of contouring in the cheeks, added a bit of blush, and of course, dat highlight dough. And the final step for Glam Cinderella, any somewhat neutral pink lip, with or without gloss. I was feeling glossy. Princess vibes acquired. Now to get down and dirty. Like all the way down. A giant flight of stairs. Okay. There's 2 very important things to note about the glass slipper in the eyeball part of this look. First and most importantly, this needs to be done in a safe way. You can't just put solid objects, especially any sharp solid objects, over your eyeball to be a creepy ass princess. You need something protecting your eye. This way, if you actually were to trip and fall while wearing the makeup, you wouldn't impale your eyeball for real. So I'm gonna get to that more in a minute. 2, this look is much easier to do on someone else as opposed to yourself. I will show you how to do this to yourself since I think that's how most of you would be recreating this for Halloween or whatever else, but I promise this will look better if you can get someone else to do this for you or at least help you with certain parts. It's very hard to see what you're doing since not only does it cover one of your eyes, but it also has a large part sticking out, so anything that needs to be done on the other side of your face beyond the heel is nearly impossible to get a good look at or to really reach well. That is why for the purpose of teaching this for self-application, I will be going over the steps to put together 90% of the eye prosthetic before it ever touches your face. Let me break that part down for you with some pictures. You will need either a life cast of your face or a flat surface that you can peel hot glue off of. I'm using a life cast since I have one, and it will help me size this perfectly for my face, but it's not totally necessary. Now the glass slipper aspect of this is kinda tough. Fun fact, if you didn't already notice, this is how big the slipper actually is. It's tiny, because it's a cake topper. Ain't no way that thing was ever fitting on my foot, but the heel ends up looking so big over the eyeball anyway that most people wouldn't ever notice. You can get crafty and create a makeshift glass heel by cutting out part of a 2-liter soda bottle. You can vacuum form a sculpt of a heel, but I think the easiest way is to find something like this that is already made in the perfect shape of a shoe. I googled glass slipper until I found this plastic cake topper, I believe off Etsy, but I'm not positive since this was a long time ago. But you can probably find some cylindrical plastic thing at your local dollar store that will work. This is definitely a look where you need to be more resourceful than usual. So anyway, in my case, I had my full glass slipper, I put it in a Ziploc bag, and I smacked it with a hammer right at the highest point of the arch before the heel, and I got this beautiful shard. Next was deciding what direction I wanted the heel going. Up seemed creepier, so I went with that. Now to make this eye safe, I had to enlist the help of all of my smartest FX friends, Powdah, Freakmo, and GoldieStarling. If any of those names are new to you, you should definitely check them out here on YouTube because they all do amazingly good SFX makeup. I am super appreciative of all of their help because they all gave me a little bit of insight on what I would need to do to figure out this very pesky makeup look, but in the end, GoldieStarling, Angie, was the one to suggest using hot glue as a way to safely patch the eye before the heel was applied. So that's what we're doing. On your work surface or life cast, put down a thin layer of Vaseline first to ensure the hot glue will peel off after. And then begin to put the glue in a circular pad shape to roughly the top, bottom, and sides of your orbital bone. If you press on your face around the eye area, you can feel exactly where your orbital bone is. It should be about that big because you don't want to be gluing this directly onto your eyelid. You want to glue it only around the edges, and your orbital bone is a safe place to anchor it. Once that glue is dry, I use more hot glue to glue down the heel in the direction I already determined. I also filed down this one little sharp piece on the side and built it up with a little bit of hot glue to make it look sharp again. On top of everything, I have my heel positioned so that the actual plastic would push onto my orbital bone under my eye rather than right on top of the eye itself. Now if we trip and fall, all of these things will protect our eye from becoming a real-life shattered Cinderella situation. If you create your heel out of something that is flexible somehow, you can get away with positioning the heel more directly on top of your eyeball, but I'd still use the hot glue patch for good measure. So this all depends on resources that you find for this, but just remember to keep asking yourself, if I fell face first with this makeup on, would my eye be pretty well protected from the heel? If you can confidently answer yes, then you're on the right track. Anywho, once that's attached, you can start the really fun stuff. You don't have to do this step if you don't want to, you can just cover it in a bunch of blood, but I do think this makes it look particularly gruesome, adding a visible eyeball inside the heel. My eyeball I found off Amazon actually. It came in a pack with different colors and they were really affordable and looked pretty darn good, so I opted to go with these rather than make my own. If you want to make your own though, you can make them from air drying clay, the same stuff we used to make the teeth in the Paranormal Activity monster tutorial. You'll just need to shape the clay into semicircles and paint accordingly. Whenever you have a ready eyeball, you want to start decorating it. I ripped off little pieces of a sea sponge and started hot gluing them to the sides of the eyeball so that it would look like the heel had literally squeezed the eyeball and some of the guts around it out of place and up into it. Yummy. Make sure that as you do this though, you keep sliding the eyeball into your heel to be sure that it will fit. You should already have, or you should create an opening on one side of the heel somewhere to be able to do this part. When that's ready, it's time for some painting. I'm using alcohol activated paints, but you can use water activated paints, cream paints, or whatever cosmetic product you've got that works. Remember to paint the inside portion of your hot glue patch red before you start stuffing eyeballs in there permanently. To paint the eyeball and its surrounding guts, I just used different variations of reds, browns, and purples, and I painted small veins onto the whites of the eye. Of course, no protruding eyeball is complete without scab blood, so I squeezed some of that into the bottom inside portion of the heel before the eyeball insertion, and in the sponge areas around the eye. Put some hot glue on the back of your fake eyeball and slide it into place inside the heel. We're almost ready for application. But if you're self-applying this is a part you will really want to do before you get to gluing this onto your face. Your eye prosthetic will likely be pretty heavy and you'll want to anchor it to your face pretty well without covering too much area. You also want to build up a little around the eye prosthetic so that the heel looks smushed down into the skin. The best place for this I determined would be on the outer side of the eye prosthetic going off the side of your face. If someone is doing this for you, they can build this up after they've glued on what you have so far. But if you're doing this by yourself, you should really do this beforehand because like I said, it's going to be really, really hard to do otherwise. So, to build it up, the easiest thing to use would be cotton and latex. If you're unfamiliar with the details of how to use cotton and latex together, I will leave some other tutorials in the description below that go over this in more detail, but more or less, you cover small pieces of cotton in liquid latex and then you sculpt the latex-soaked cotton into the shape you need it before it dries. That's what I did here, where you can see the side getting built out and going slightly up around the side of the heel. When we glue this on our face, this extra area of contact will help keep the weight of this heel on our face better. Once your cotton and latex buildup is dry, it'll be pretty solid to the touch and you'll be able to paint it to match your skin. I would paint this as closely to your skin now as possible, so that the only thing you need to do once this is on is add blood. I painted the buildup with my color of foundation plus some light washes of brown alcohol activated paint so that it wasn't too bright. In retrospect, this didn't match perfectly, but once it was on my face, I couldn't do much to fix it. This is your whole piece for the eye, and most of this look is already done. On to the actual application, which should only take you about half an hour tops if you've done all these other steps already. Speaking of other steps, we just fell down a bunch, so we've got to make it look like it. Before we can't see too well, we need to beat ourselves up a little. Using my alcohol activated paints again, I'm going to start making some irritation marks along my face, arms, neck, and chest. I call them irritation marks because you wouldn't be bruised yet if you had just tumbled down a set of stairs, but you're doing pretty much the same thing as bruises without the purples. They'd just be red, like you just got smacked by a few dozen 90-degree slabs of concrete. In various random areas, I'm laying down light washes of different reds with a fluffy brush and tapping out the color as another means to manipulate the shape and opacity of the mark. I'll link my bruise tutorial down below if you want more details on this general paint pattern. But then, one of my worst YouTube nightmares happened. I thought I was recording the next few things I did, and as it turns out, I wasn't. So, suddenly, some stuff happened. Let me sum it up for you. It's luckily really simple. I took scab blood, or you could use regular fake blood, on this black stipple sponge, and I lightly dragged it against my skin in several areas to replicate some scrapes. Then I took latex and laid it down in random areas and near some scrapes, and I put ground coffee on top of the latex and on top of the blood in the scrapes. On top of the scrapes, the coffee replicates kind of that scabby, gravelly, concrete-filled wound you might have gotten if you skinned your knee in the playground as a kid, and away from the scrapes, the coffee acts as just general dirt. Anyhow, those are a few quick things you can do to beat yourself up. On to the main course, one juicy, protruding eyeball coming up. Apply Prosade or spear gum to the perimeter of the back of your already made prosthetic and applying your adhesive onto the orbital bone as well. Make sure that when you put spirit gum or Prosade on the back of your prosthetic, you're not putting it anywhere that your actual eyelid is going to be. We don't want to get glue in our eyes. Stick to the outside or where it goes onto the side of your face. You'll know Prosade is ready when it's clear or nearly clear, and you'll know spirit gum is ready when it's tacky to the touch as opposed to just slimy. You do not need to tap spirit gum to make it work, but tapping is often associated with spirit gum because it is the easiest way to check if it's tacky and ready. All you need is a little waiting time for either, and you're ready to set your fake eyeball on top of your real eyeball. The last step in this whole process now is to add blood. If you're applying this on yourself, this is a good opportunity to compensate for some of the things you might not be able to blend meticulously. If you're applying this on someone else, you should have already used cotton and latex wherever possible and needed to blend the outside of the wounds as much as you can. I'm using regular blood and scab blood on my black stipple sponge again to stamp some texture under and around the eye prosthetic. Since this fall was violent and with blunt force, it makes more sense that the blood would be a bit messy and not just perfectly drippy. But upon lifting the head up, it's safe to assume that even in this cartoony type of injury, the blood would be dripping down from the eye. So I'm dripping some blood under the eye using a syringe. You can drip blood off a Q-tip just as well though. I also packed chunks of scab blood all around the prosthetic too because, well, it's just gross. Ideally, I wish this wound didn't go over so far in the upper right corner of my eye area, like towards the inside of my eyebrow, where that would be. But in order to hit the orbital bone, and because of not being able to construct too much around it once it was already on, it needed to go this far. If I were doing this look on someone else though, I would have built up cotton and latex in that corner so that the overall wound was restricted to where the glass shard was. As with all things on this channel, always use what you have, do what you can, and keep safety a priority. Last, but certainly not least, after all that application, you'll probably want to shine your heel up with a little Windex. Because heck, if you have a glass slipper in your eye, the least you can do is keep it streak-free. Stay tuned for the behind the scenes and bloopers for this whole thing, and be sure to share the Cinderella trailer with any friends who might be dealing with a proverbial boy right now. Hope you enjoyed watching this video and learning the steps involved. But more than anything, I hope you feel like a princess.